Hey guys, I'm actually recording this after the video. I just want to ask you to hit a like and click subscribe if you want to help me, of course. And I have a TDD newsletter where I also released the course videos earlier, and you can check it on the description. And there's also my Twitter. I don't post much, but I might. So that's it, and let's go to the video. So today I'm going to walk you guys through how I usually do my testing. So I have a fresh Laravel install. I am using Laravel 7. And I assume you already know the basics of TDD. If you don't, I suggest to check the testing page on the Laravel documentation. It's really good. It's going to give you some concepts. But TDD is all about obviously testing. So tests can be beneficial in several ways. First of all, it allows you to actually know what's going on with your code. Second of all, it helps you maintain your code. So let's say you write a feature today and you didn't write a test. If someone writes another code like 1 or 2 years later and it uses the same class or something, it may break your previous code and you won't know. If you did have a test, it's going to show you. If you did have a test, you were going to know that. So I'm going to leave those in the description, some reasons about why testing is important, so we don't lose much time with the video. So I already have Sublime open here, and let me just make this smaller. I don't know how to do. Okay, here. Okay, cool. So the first thing I like to do is check the phpunit.xml file. If we go down here, we have some configuration that helps our tests. First of all, we have this one here, DB connection. Laravel defaults to use SQLite on test and use an in-memory database. This is really helpful as you don't actually need to have a database to run tests. But I suggest changing this. I'm not going to cover this on this video. It's not a really big issue if you leave this as it is. But if you are using any specific feature of either MySQL or Postgres, you have to change this. And if you are using another driver like Mongo, you also have to change this. It's not going to work. Then we have our app-env, which is defaulted to testing. And we do have some support stuff like setting the queue connection to sync, so we always run our jobs. Setting the mail mailer to array, so we don't actually send emails, and session driver and telescope. So Laravel ships with two folders here, feature tests and unit tests. Unit tests are supposed to be used on a single class, like if you want to test a helper class you wrote, a service, something like this. While feature tests are supposed to test a bigger image of things, so kind of like the whole request lifecycle. If you're testing a controller, you are writing a feature test. Now, if you're writing a test for a model, some people like to say this is not a unit test because the model interacts with several other classes and that you can touch the database on unit tests. I don't agree with this. I think that it is fine to touch the database. After all, it is there. You have to test it. So I would usually have tests for models and some services here and have controller tests here. So we are going to write a course app. So it's an app where people can subscribe to courses, and courses are added by the staff. So the first thing we got to do is to create the models. We already have the user model. We need to create the course model. So let's go back here. Oops, here. Let's run make model course and use the M flag to get a migration. Cool. Let's go back here. Let's go to the migration file. So what do we need on the courses table? Well, we need a title and we need a description. Let's just go with this for now. So description. Actually, let's make that a string as it's not supposed to be big and make it nullable. Now let's go to the course table, the course model, sorry, and create a fillable property. We want the title and the description to be fillable. Okay, we already have that done. So the first test I want to write is that a user can subscribe to a course. So to generate tests, Laravel provides a really nice command called make test. So let's run it. If we just write a test name, let's say something like users can subscribe to courses test. If we pass the unit flag here, it's going to generate a unit test. If we don't pass anything, it's going to regenerate a feature test. So let's run it. And here we go. It already comes with an example. Let's get rid of it. Now, there are a few ways to write a test case. First of all, it's using this notation. So we write a function, a method, and we say test something. PHP unit is going to recognize this as a test. If we write test something, it's also going to recognize it as a test. Now, what I like to do is write something like this. It subscribes to a course. And then we can add the test annotation here, and it's going to work. Now, the first thing I do whenever I create a test file is think of all the tests that I can think of, obviously, and write them. I'm not going to actually write them, but I'm just going to put them here. So it subscribes to a course, and it does not allow a user to subscribe. Sorry, a subscribed user to subscribe again. And the ones that I'm not going to write right now, I'm going to mark them as incomplete. And let me add the test annotation here. And this one, I also want to send a notification. So sends a notification. Now, the other thing that I do right before I write anything is pull the database migrations trait or the database transactions. What it does is it migrates everything, it runs your tests, and then it refreshes the database. It's really, really helpful. So let's use it. Database migrations, import it, and we're good. So when it's going when it starts to run this one, it's going to migrate everything, run your test, and then refresh the database. So it's fresh on the second test right here. Now, what do we need to test this? We need a user and a course, obviously. And Laravel provides a very helpful feature called factories. Factories basically allow you to mass generate models, mass generate records on the database. And here's how you write a factory. We say user, factory, user. Now, if we want to generate multiple users, we can pass a second argument here. We are not going to, so let's just continue. And we say create. And we also need a course. Now let's try running this. Let's say vendor bin PHP unit. So it's failing, unable to locate factory. Of course, we haven't created a factory. So let's write it. Make factory, course factory. And if we go to database factories, we see it here. Laravel already comes with the user factory. So first we have to define the model. So course. And here we pass the attributes. It already comes with faker, which is a random data generator. So let's say title. Let's say that we want a fake sentence and description. Let's say paragraph. Or actually, let's leave that as no. So let's run this now. Well, the test did not perform any assertions. So PHP unit has these very helpful alerts. What I like to do sometimes is just dump and die some variables to check how things are going. So we can see that we do have a record being generated. Now it's time to actually test this. We need to simulate a request. So how do we do this? Laravel already provides this to us. So response, let's say that we want to make this request as if we were the user, so acting as. Then we want to make a post request to a root called courses subscribe and pass the course. And after we have the response, we want to make sure that we were redirected to root courses show course. And we also want to make sure that the user is subscribed to the course. So how can we do this? Let's say we want to assert that it's true. We're going to use two assertions very often: assert true and assert equals. Assert equals is just making sure that a value is the same as the other. So we want to say assert true that the user is subscribed to course. Let's create the course. Now, this is really nice. Whenever we are writing tests, sometimes we stumble on things that require us to write another test. So we don't have this method yet, and we are going to write it, but we are also going to write a test for it before we finish testing this one. So let's run our code. So root courses subscribe is not defined. Well, that's true. We don't have the root. So let's go to the roots file. Let's write a controller called subscribe to course controller. Let's say post course subscribe. Name courses subscribe. Now let's run again our tests. Okay, now we have another error. So we don't have that action. So we don't have a subscribe to course controller. But I did create it. Oh, okay, we don't have the invoke method. So let's write it. We have a course being passed. And let's dump the course just to check things. And we can see that the course is indeed being passed. So I want to make sure it's redirecting. Okay. Now, what we do in testing, what the whole methodology is that we write tests, we run them, they're going to give us a red, which means they're not passing, they're going to fail. We write the simplest code possible to make them pass, and then we refactor, always making sure that they are green. Now, I don't like to take this to the extreme, so what you usually see on some testing videos and stuff is that they are going to write something. So we want to make sure it's redirecting here. So we could do something like redirect root courses show first course. Now, what they do is they're going to write the simplest code possible, even if it doesn't make much sense, because right here we are not subscribing the user, and go step by step. And this is helpful in the beginning, but you are going to quickly get tired of it. So as you get more experience, you don't need it. You already know what things are going on, so it's easier for you. And so you wouldn't do this, but let's do this. So let's run it. So root courses show not defined. The reason we do this when we are beginning is because the tests are going to give you a direction. They're going to say to you what you need to do. So as of right now, it's actually telling us that we don't have that root defined. So let's create it. Let's create a controller. So courses controller. Let's make it a resource. Let's just say root resource. courses controller. Let's run it. Oh, sorry, it's a typo here. It's assert redirect. I'm sorry. Let's run it. So call to undefined method is subscribe to course. Now it's time to write another test. So let me clear this. And let's make a unit test. So make test, course test, unit. If we go here, okay, we have it. Now, if you see that it's extending the PHP unit framework test case, and the other one is actually using the the test case. Those are a bit different. When we load the Laravel one, it's actually loading the application, and it allows us to do things like factories and do requests and stuff like that. So I don't like using this one. I prefer to use the Laravel one. Theoretically, the tests in the unit test folder shouldn't have access to the application, but as I said in the beginning, that's up to you. This is not a hard rule. It's not a rule at all. And I prefer to have them here. So let's import it. Test case. Okay. So the test that we want to do is it checks if a user is subscribed to a course. And let's use factors again. So let's copy it from here. Let's import the classes. Okay. Now, first thing we want to do is make sure that right now the user is not subscribed to the course. So subscribe to course. We could also do assert equals here. So we could say whatever, it doesn't really matter. Let's use assert false. Then we want to subscribe the user to a course. So let's say user subscribe to course. Let's specify a course. And then we want to make sure that the user is subscribed to the course. Now, here's a little trick. We already know that we're talking about relationships here. And if we write any code that uses in-memory relationships, if you don't know what it is, it's, let's say you have the courses relationship already. If you do courses get like this, you are fetching the courses all the time, every time that you run this. So if you run this twice, you are fetching the courses twice. Now, if you run this, Laravel is going to fetch the courses, store them in memory, and if you run it again, it's not going to do this. It's just going to choose the collection that's already in memory. That's really, really, really important. When you are testing, when we're testing something like this, we've already checked it once if the user is subscribed to the course. If we are doing this in a query, that's fine. It's not going to give us any issues. But if we are pulling the courses and then checking if the user is subscribed to a certain course, it's only going to fetch the courses once. So what we are going to do is make sure that the user is subscribed to the course later. And because we already fetched the courses, this is going to show us false all the time because the courses are already in the model. So what I suggest you do is every time you do stuff like this, that you are mutating a object, not mutating in this case, but that you are adding relationships, adding anything that's related to a model, is to refresh it right after. So we subscribe to user, and now let's refresh it. We can just call refresh. Laravel is going to get us a new model instance, a fresh record, and swap it for us. It's the same as doing user equals user fresh. So, okay. Now let's run this. So to run a specific test, you can just pass the file. So test unit course test, and you can see that we got an error here. And as I said, I'm not editing this screencast only when I'm coughing or something. So this is what sometimes happen when I'm writing tests. Sometimes I forget to add the database migration rate. So let's set it. Now let's run it again. Oh, sorry, wrong comment. So call to undefined method. Okay, now it's time to write this. So the easiest way to get this passing edge list, this step, is to return false, because that's what we expect. Now, this is what I used to do in the beginning. That's what I suggest you guys do in the beginning. Let the test guide you. As you get more experience, you already know what to do, so you will skip a few steps. But give it time. So let's run it again. Oh, sorry, it's the wrong method. It's saying okay. Now it's saying that we don't have the method subscribe to course. So let's write it. And let's just return true for now. So failed asserting the false is true on line 25, which is this one. So right now, let's actually write some code. So first of all, let's write the subscribe to course code. So let's do something like this: courses, attach a course. This is a many-to-many relationship. Let's run it. So call to undefined method courses. We don't have the relationship, obviously. Let's add it. Sorry, it belongs to many. Now let's run it. So no such table. As you guys know, many-to-many relationships require a pivot table. And the tests are telling us this. So let's make it. Create course user. Create course user pivot table. Let's go back to it. Whoa. I'm not sure why it's not showing up. But it's here. I don't know. What's funny? So let's say we want an unsigned integer called course ID and a user ID. Okay, cool. Let's run it again. Let me get rid of the sidebar. So failed asserting the false is true. So now we actually write some code. This is a placeholder. We know that this is not the correct code. So what I would do is, let me think of, so I would say this courses, where ID matches the course ID. I would do something like this. You could do contains, you could do exists, but I'm going to use this one. Now, let's make it return a boolean. So let's make this. Let's run it. And cool, it's passing. So we are actually testing two features here. We are testing that it knows when you are subscribed to a course, and it also subscribes the user. So we're actually just encapsulating some functionality here. I really like to do this. I don't like calling this every time. Prefer to have something more readable, such as subscribe to course. It's more of an action. So let's go back to our users can subscribe to courses test. So let's run it specifically to that file. So tests, feature, users can subscribe to course tests. So it's still failing. We already have that tested, so we know that it's working. And that's because we are not actually doing anything here. So let's subscribe the user. Let's say auth user to get the authenticated user. Subscribe to course. Pass the course. So yeah, it's working. But what I forgot to do is to check the notifications there. So I'm really sorry. It's really hard to do screencasts and keep a check on everything. So how do we do this? It's really simple. We can call it notification facade. So let's import it. And we will call the fake method. I'm not going to go in depth of what it does, but it basically swaps the instance of the notification class. And every time that you send a notification through the app, it's not going to actually send it. It's going to store it in memory, and then you can check if it was sent. So after we've done this, we can say notification, assert was sent to the user. We want to make sure the subscribe to course notification was sent. And then we can pass a callback that gets a notification object, and we can say, let me just use course, and we can say that the course that is on that notification is the course that we have right here. And another thing that I would do is the same as we've done on the other tests. I would just make sure that the user is not subscribed to the course before starting the test, even though I know that's true because we are using database migrations and we have the tested on the method. That's already tested. We don't have to test it again here. But anyway, redundancy is not bad at all. Okay, so let's run this. So fail at sorting the true is false, 26. Oh, sorry, that's supposed to go here. Really sorry, guys. That's a shame. So fail at sorting the false is true, line 30. Again, what I said before, whenever we do anything that changes something, we have to refresh the user. Now, I could edit this, I could make another take and show some perfect code, but that's what happens in reality when I'm writing tests, when I'm working. Sometimes that happens. It usually does not, but it does happen, and it's not a big deal. You don't have to write perfect tests all the time and make everything pass and write the correct tests at first. So we are refreshing it. Let's run it again. Cool. So right now it's saying that the notification, it's assert sent to. Again, that happens. We can remember every method. What I usually do is whenever I don't really remember how the method was called, is I write something and I use a plugin called, I don't remember the name, but it allows me to go to the method. So if I press F12, it shows me a file that contains the method. Now, the method didn't exist, so I would press F12 and nothing was going to work. So it would say unable to find assert was sent to. Okay, let's run it again. So the expected subscribe to course notification was not sent. You can see that the namespace is wrong. The class was not supposed to be here. So let's first write the generate a notification. So make notification, subscribe to course, and let's import it. Okay, I imported it. So it's still not finding it, but it's a different notification here. It has the proper namespace. So we are not sending it. Let's write some code to do this. I'm going to show you something. So I'm going to write the wrong code first. So I'm going to say user notify new subscribe to course. Now, there's a wrong thing here. We're not passing the course object. So right here, we are making sure that the course on the notification object is the same one as we have right here. So it's going to fail. Let me show you guys. So undefine a property. We don't have the property, so let's add it. Let's just create it. Let's not populate it. Let's just say public course. So trying to get property ID of non-object. So if we just follow the error, we can see that it happens on line 36. And we know that this object exists. So when I'm not sure what object it's talking about, I like to dump in die stuff. So I would say dump in die notification, dump in die course. That way, I know that the course exists, and I know that notification exists, but it might be missing something. So I know that the error, the issue is with the notification. Let's get rid of this. So you might be hearing some noise of a truck on the street. I'm really sorry. Let's say we expect a course. Course equals course. I hate this. Okay, let's test it. So that's funny. I was actually waiting to get to that point. This is not a really helpful error. We don't know what it means. And that's because of the Laravel exception handler. The exception handler is responsible for doing a lot of cool stuff, like converting a model not found exception to a 404 HTTP response. When you run abort, it changes. It doesn't show an exception. It actually returns a 403. I think it's a default one, or 401. I'm not sure, but that's what it does. It catches exceptions and do some stuff with it if needed. Now, we have the exception handler running here because we are making a request, and we need it because when we are testing something like validation, the validation is actually an exception. The validation failed, and it is converted to a response. So we need the exception handler to do its job. But when we are not testing something that requires the exception handler, we can call the without exception handler method. What it does is it does not handle an exception, it just throws in. So if we run this again, it's going to give you the actual error. So too few arguments. So we are expecting the course argument, but we are not passing anything. So let's pass it. Course. And okay, that's it. The test is passing. Now we do have another test, right? Let's copy a lot of this. So let's copy it. We don't need this right here. We actually can just subscribe the user right now. So subscribe to course. We are already starting the test with the user being subscribed to the course. So, okay, now we are going to use the exception handler. Take a look. Let's copy this right here. I'm sorry, this right here. So right now we want to assert that we have a bad response. So let's say we want to make sure that the status is something like 422, which is a validation error. And we also want to make sure that we do have errors on the session. We're not returning JSON. If we are returning JSON, we have a specific method for that. We are going to cover this later. Well, let me show you guys really quick. So assert JSON validation errors. So we want to make sure it has the... We can either pass just an array with keys. So we can say user, message, stuff like that. Or we can make sure it's the exact error that we are expecting. So let's do this. Let's pass an array. And let's pass a key value. So let's say the user object. So something like the user is already subscribed to the course. So we also want to make sure that we are refreshing the user right here. And actually, we're not supposed to get a 422. We are supposed to get a 302 because we are not returning JSON. We only get 422 when returning JSON. JSON validation errors. If we're not doing this, we get a 302, which is redirecting to the previous page. Now, let's run it. And I'm actually running it with a filter here, so we can use the filter flag to only run a single test, but let's run everything. So we can see that everything passes. We have those tests done. And yeah, that's how I write tests in real life. We sometimes don't make it work on the first try, and we have to check things. It happens. Um, so this is it for this lesson. We are already testing a couple things. On the next lesson, let's test the notification that we wrote, and let's add some features like making sure that the user can only see the course after he subscribed to it, and that let's set some expiration date for a course so users cannot subscribe past that date, and we'll see where it goes. So thank you for watching. Um, Please, if you like this video, subscribe to the channel, leave a like. I do have a TDD newsletter, and you can subscribe to it on the description. I also release the course videos earlier for the subscribers, so if you like this video, it's going to be helpful. And of course, there's my Twitter. I don't post much, but sometimes I do, so you can check that out. Thank you, and see you later.